Slacker Cat here. Welcome back to a non-video video. We have been discussing how to talk about... am I going to get it wrong? Beginner's Guide?
Yeah.
Beginner's Guide.
Yeah, this is not a video. This is just a really inconvenient podcast.
So,
Don't look for us on Stitcher. Because we're not fucking there.
we're not going to be on the YouTube store. They didn't want us.
We're not going to be on the app face. You can find us, however, on Tinder. We have a group account.
Swipe right.
If you swipe right, you get all of us. I just want to warn you on that.
Choose right. Swipe right.
So, we can't really do a video on the Beginner's Guide, because doing a video ruins the entire effect of the game. And I've seen a few people do, like, Let's Plays of the Beginner's Guide, and I don't...
It's dumb. It's really dumb.
It's a little pointless.
Yeah.
The number one, the commenting on the game while you're playing it for public consumption is so counter. One of the reasons we're not doing a video at all is spoilers for obvious reasons. But also, let me just say, well, we're going to spoil the crap out of this. The content of the game resists immediate commenting.
And I'm going to go ahead and give great big spoiler warnings now. If you haven't played the game and intend to play it, then I really recommend that you go play the game. It's a fucking good game. It's not an expensive game. It's like $10 on Steam. It's 2 hours long. Just please go play it. It's a fucking good game. I mean, this might be like top 5 games for me this year.
And again, I don't really even know if it's a game. And by that I mean, like, I experienced the entirety of the Beginner's Guide watching someone else play it. Now, I mean, you can say the same thing about old school adventure games. I mean, Armitrog. But we just recorded Armitrog and released it on our channel. And you can safely say that after you see a playthrough of Armitrog, you've pretty much experienced Armitrog, but in that you experience the solution to the puzzle and the narrative arc.
Mm-hmm.
With a Beginner's Guide, there's a difference. You're really just getting the arc. And the arc relies on what's going on in the game.
Not only that,
but it really,
if I can interrupt you,
it really doesn't need you to be there. By you, I mean just any player in general.
well, a lot of it too is also very dependent on how you as a person, as a player, actually progresses. Because ultimately you get to the same end, but at the same time, you can choose how you handle certain aspects of the game when it's presented to you.
Yeah, there are certain things you can change, and depending on how you interact with certain parts of the game, you do get the different dialogues. Like, there was one point where, when I was playing through and showing Beginner here, you have to go to the second floor of the spaceship you're on and talk to somebody, and that is how you stop everything. But I didn't know the first time, until the voice guy came in and started telling me about how the puzzle was solved and all that good stuff. So there are gameplay elements, and without the gameplay elements, it wouldn't be quite so powerful, I don't think, because you do make choices and interactions that keep you involved directly with what's going on.
I hear y'all on that, and I guess what I'm trying to say is this game is about as close to a painting as I've ever seen, wherein you're presented with the elements, and how you process the elements dictates how you feel about the piece of art you're being presented. But they just sort of exist. Like a painting, they're just sort of there. They're there no matter what you do. Like, there's not really an Easter eggy portion. The narrative itself doesn't really shift depending on if you look at one thing or the other. It's all there. It's all there, and it doesn't require any real separation of talent or skill or time to experience.
Yeah.
It's just a painting. Like a beginner's guide is a digital painting that's just sort of sitting there waiting for you.
And there's even a painting within it, so maybe you kind of hit on a little bit that this is something. When you see it from far away, it looks like something that's more than it is, but then you get up close and it's messy and it's ugly. There's not a lot to be seen with it.
Well,
you could probably apply that.
I think we should start with the tagline itself of the game, if somebody can bring that up.
What is it?
Well, here, somebody bring up the Steam Storm page, and or store page rather, and let's...
Not it. I don't have a computer.
I literally can't bring it up right now, otherwise I'll break everything.
Okay, hang on.
But, unlike, say, with Gone Home, right? There are puzzles that you need to solve. There's interactivity. If you don't go to certain places, you don't find out parts of the plot. If you are playing the Stanley Parable, your actions completely change the course and outcome of what happens and what you're doing. The Novelist, there's interactive portions that can change what you're doing and seeing. There is, I will say, David has a point here, that the interactions that you make within the game do not change your outcome on the same level. So, on that end, it is less game-like.
Yes.
But, if you've ever known anybody who dicks around with Unity a lot, they do make games like this, where they're mostly designing and laying out art assets as, experiments more than anything else. So, in an essence, it is games in the sense of the games that somebody would make if they make them for themselves as, a painting that you can walk through.
And I should say, I'm not shitting on a beginner's guide, specifically because I don't remember a game in the last year or so that pushed me through so many emotions as a beginner's guide did. There's a segment of the game where you clean a house, and not to say too much, but I have never been more at peace, proactively doing something that caused me a peaceful feeling than I have just fiddling with that house cleaning.
I will say The Last of Us is probably the last game that was as evocative, I think, as Beginner's Guide. But not even remotely on the same level, but it did.
It's so
well, and by its nature, it can't be. The Last of Us, it's a very emotive game, and it's meant to draw you into its world with its atmosphere and its characters, but comparing it to the Beginner's Guide is inherently unfair because of the nature of the two games.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, they're so diagonal, because Last of Us is a very sort of traditional narrative experience, wrapped in a third-person survival kind of thing. Beginner's Guide is first-person, and there's two arcs, or it might just be 1.5. But the games are just sort of representative of the experiences of somebody who isn't talking and you don't meet, but matter to the person you are talking to who might be the same person. It's like comparing, it'd be like comparing Saving Private Ryan to El Topo.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a comparison.
That's for all those cinema snobs out there.
All you Brad Joneses listening to us. I think I might just have a small orgasm if I found out that Brad Jones listened to one of our shows.
Yeah, if you commented on one of these, oh hey, yeah, I did like El Topo. I would call him to work. I'm not doing anything productive that day.
But back on topic. So what was the subtitle for
Okay.
the Beginner's Guide?
So I think it's important with this kind of game to look at it also from a meta perspective. So let's look at the Steam page. The Steam page says this. Amongst other things, it says, it lasts about an hour and a half and has no traditional mechanics, no goals or objectives. Instead, it tells the story of a person struggling to deal with something they do not understand. And then if you watch the trailer that's provided, it shows somebody, in this case Davey, logging into a computer and then talking about going through a person's files and playing games. So right there from the start, we're getting somebody who is invading somebody's privacy and playing games that were not meant for them.
Yeah, Davey, by the way, Davey is the narrator of A Beginner's Guide. And he's narrating about these games that belong to someone else named Coda. And there was a falling out between the two for many reasons. A lot of them seem to be on Davey, as you figure out, and a lot of them have to do with the sort of dominion people have over their own creations and their meaning. And the fact that you're playing the fucking game makes you complicit.
Yep.
It's true. You do have to kind of follow the stereotypical faulty narrator.
Unreliable narrator.
Unreliable.
I don't think we should touch on that just yet. I think we should talk about sort of what happens in progression and then discuss why he's unreliable. Because that's a big reveal.
Okay. Well, so yeah, we start off in a Counter-Strike now. Everything in the game is made through the Source engine, which he tells you outright. Counter-Strike was your originator of the Source engine.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
And when it starts, it really does feel like someone's taking you. That first level sort of feels like someone's taking you through a photo album of their buddies. Their buddies.
They're old games.
Hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of hobby match. Like sitting down with Kite to play this, I was like, okay, so this guy's showing us his dead friends' games. Like that's the narrative here.
Yeah.
And you find out pretty quickly that's not true. Because the next couple levels have to deal with. Do prisons come immediately after that?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you start off with the next
The labyrinth.
Yeah, it's the gun game where you're given a gun that shoots but doesn't really shoot. There's no sound effects to the shooting. When you unload your full clip, there's no reloading. You're just out of gunshot, and you're wandering around this unfinished game. If you look out at the universe, Davey makes sure to point out to you, there's no bottom to the universe. But it all looks like a stereotypical game, as if Coda was making a game at the point as he understood a game.
And it should be noted at this point that he is commenting little here and there and offering his own interpretations, which we're going to get back to much later on in the discussion. Like when he mentions the world box and looking down, you can see the end of the universe. Just little things here and that as you're playing through the levels. It's very interesting because it all comes back sort of like setup and then punchline towards the end of the game.
He talks about how there are multicolored boxes in the first Counter-Strike map in the middle of the desert town, and how it makes it feel kind of dreamlike. And in the next level, the gun level, there are no enemies to really shoot. And at the end of that level, there is sort of a narrative to that level, because a lady tells you have to die to save everyone in this area, and when you die, you rise above the map. And Davey seems like he's really interested in what that means, as sort of loss to sacrifice, and maybe a movement to afterlife, and like being able to see all this complex stuff from above and making it look simple. And that's sort of, it should be your first clue there that Davey is looking at something a little too hard but since it's progressing so naturally, the complexity of both his thoughts and the maps, they arc the same way, so you sort of don't really notice when, especially in the next few levels, not for a while, that he's maybe looking too far into this.
Right.
Then it's the prisons, right?
Not like quite yet, because after you get out of there, they do the entrance bit, right?
You are now entering.
And he makes a big deal about the entrance bit.
Yeah.
Where there's a level where you have like a circle of light, like you have a flashlight in like the middle of this field, and, like you can hear crickets, and there's a sign that says "Now entering," and when you pass it, that's the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I was playing that, I was like, "Did he fucking rip off Slenderman here for half a second?" I was kind of.
And it feels, and those are the thoughts you're having as you're playing, like the labyrinth gun level with the death at the end. You're like, okay, this sort of feels like somebody wanted to make Blackstone and Half-Life.
Sure.
And when you see the now entrance, it's like, okay, he was filling with horror elements and Slenderman and stuff. And as you go on, you find out you might be more right than you think. But Davey doesn't think so. Davey thinks that there's something much more powerful at play.
And Davey really does make very good, solid, cogent arguments for his thoughts and synopsis of what's going on. And it's hard not at this point to just sympathize with what he's saying. You're given no reason not to. Everything he's saying makes logical sense.
And it should be noted, as you play throughout the game, his interpretations make total logical sense from what he's presenting us, which is another key point we'll get back to. Everything that we see as we go through Coda's supposed emotions and his interpretation seems right on the nose.
I think your first hint that something is a little bit awry is the stair level.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next one in order, where you're presented with a room at the top of a set of stairs. And as you go up the stairs, you get slower and slower until you slow down completely and you'll never reach the stairs. It's a very Sisyphus task, There's
Spin, yeah.
That you'll never get out what you got into.
And then Davey does something, because you're playing this game, and it's Coda's game, and Davey says, if y'all don't mind, or something, he basically says, I'm going to turn off the slowness that Coda added so you can get to the top of the stairs. And he does, and you're able to get to the top of the level, and there's this weird hotel thing in there, very kind of deco-esque.
Very sort of 70s, and it's a room with video game ideas. Now, the thing is, you can make it to the top without him altering the game. Josh did a playthrough where he let Davey alter it, and then I did a playthrough where you just walk straight up, and it takes a while, like 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. And ultimately, you get the same conclusion either way. But right there is the sort of beginning where we see he is deliberately altering the experience for his own means. So that's sort of like clue number one, that something is awry here.
And directly in his next level, he even kind of talks about that, right? Because the next level, you're going through this kind of straight labyrinth and continuing to go down. You walk into this cafe, the cafe bathroom has a hole in the floor, and then you fall into this other world. And he's talking about how he met Coda, which is just a weird meeting in the first place, because he says he meets Coda at a game jam, which doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me.
Not with how he presents Coda, because he says he meets Coda at a game jam. For those of y'all who don't know, a game jam is where people get together to sort of share like beta games they're working on, or some completed ideas, or level tests.
Or alternatively,
like
you
that.
have anywhere from 24 to 40 hours to create a game with a group or a team of people. So there's multiple interpretations of game jams.
But all of these are very social events where you gather together and you talk about your work with other people.
And the way Davey presents Coda for the entirety of the game up until near the end, or at least that's where we see Coda assert himself, which we'll get to, if that is the case. It's very, I'm sorry, there's like layers on layers here. But Davey talks about Coda as a very guarded person, like very socially cut off. So again, like, and this is almost in the same breath where he says, like, I met him at a game jam. Yep. So there's more going on, and after the level with the labyrinth at the bottom, is the room of hallways with disappearing walls.
Well, I mean, there's more to say in that the labyrinth, right? Because that's when you first hear that there's a disconnect between the two of them, right? Because Davey believes that a game requires a goal, an objective to be had, while Coda...
A form of playability, as he calls it.
Yeah. Here's 1,000 playable games. Each one is a box. You get in the box, you've solved the game, you win. In each one, it's 1,000 versions of the same box.
Whereas Coda, he's just making games for the experience of making games, or at least that's what it seems like. He doesn't really, at least the games that were presented as, he doesn't seem to have, like, a goal or a means to an end. It's just, yeah, it's a level. Like, if we look at his Counter-Strike level, it's just a level. The engine and the actual game provides the objectives and everything else. It's just a level. And his earlier titles, that theme sort of progresses. Now, instead, we've got Davey, who is insisting that there has to be a goal or an objective or some sort of playability, and that's where you start to see the conflict between the two of them.
And, you know, at this point, Coda kind of hit me as kind of like how my buddy Zach plays Minecraft. He doesn't care about the fact that there's a world. He just wants to zone out and build a fucking elaborate castle of his own design. It seems to me like that's what Coda mostly makes. He makes a labyrinth that's very straightforward.
But importantly, he makes a labyrinth for himself.
Mm.
Yeah.
And this reminds me, like, at this point in the game, I'm reminded of the arguments I used to see between people playing Team Fortress and people playing stuff like The Sims in the movies, where it was like, you know, in Team Fortress there are two teams, and whoever kills the most dudes wins. And then you have The Sims, where it's just like, exist and continue to do so. The movies,
or not.
The movies has a point system, and you know, to make your studio better and stuff. It really just boils down to, hey, fuck around. Here's the thing, fuck around with it.
Yeah.
Which they're two different schools of thought, but they're not. Whilst the killing dudes for points or to, you know, move the story along is probably the more popular of the two ideas, we can't forget that fucking Minecraft is a thing, and it's a huge thing. Just, like, exist. Here's the thing, exist. Exist in it. Which Coda seems more geared towards.
Now, was the next level the beginning of the I don't remember, was it the beginning of the first phase?
What I'm trying to remember is the first time we see a lamppost.
It's at the end of, I think, the second stage that had that puzzle in it, where you get through the puzzle, and then you talk to the box heads the first time you see the box heads, and then after you get through them, you get the courtyard with the lamppost.
Yeah, because the puzzle that Coda keeps repeating throughout all of his games is a very simple puzzle.
It's a neat puzzle.
Yeah, it's definitely neat, but it's like one of those, like, it'd be like in the third level of Legend of Zelda, you know what I mean? It's not intricate, it's not difficult, it's just, you know, fiddle with the parts long enough and you get it.
There's a certain cleverness to it, but Davey focuses on how simple it is. While it appears on the outside kind of clever after you mess with it, you can't help but be colored by Davey's impression of it being simplistic, because he's the only narrator you have. he's the only point of view in this game. It's not you. And the lamppost, there's a lamppost at the end. You do talk to some people about solving the puzzle. Some people with cubes for their heads. And you can't, by the nature of the dialogue you have with them, you can't really tell them the truth or get them out of the road. There's no way to to save people in the level Coda has created. And at the end of the game, you fall further into a hole and you get dumped down in a courtyard with a lamppost in the middle.
Well, what interests me is that Davey pays 0 fucks to the people who are talking, to these voices. Instead, he focuses purely on the aesthetic of the door and the lamppost, saying that the door is a way to cross into the end, right? It's his way of putting a period on the end of a sentence is the lamppost, and the juxtaposition would be your door puzzle, which from his explanation makes a certain amount of sense. But the thing that interests me is in the game they seem to more mention, when dealing with the puzzle, the parts between the two doors, because when you open the door you have to close it, and when you close it you're in nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to proceed is to open the other door. But for a moment, you are just there. You are in this foggy blackness. And that's all you're presented with. And maybe it's now I'm starting to put interpretation onto a game about how interpretation can be a strange thing to do.
Well, and look at it like this too, because we're encouraged to take what Davey's saying at face value. Like, there's nothing up to this point that suggests we should do otherwise, unless you really kind of pause and stop and go, wait a minute, this is his interpretation, what am I thinking about it?
Yeah, Coda gets no real advocate until the very end.
Yeah, like, for example...
You're right.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, Josh is, and to what Josh is saying, Coda has to be his own advocate. He doesn't get an advocate like Davey does through insertion. He relies on his advocate being himself through his own creation.
Exactly. And Davey is sort of outright refusing to acknowledge this. And again, we can talk about how this came about in the real world too. For example, in the Stanley Parable, and all the different reactions that came out of that, people were taking their interpretations and sending them to Davey saying, oh, this is what I think, this is what you meant, this is your whatever. And he made a comic, and he posted it on Galactic Cafe, where he talks about this sort of reaction to people sending him hate mail and positivity and questions and all sorts of stuff, putting their interpretations on his work. And he's doing sort of the same thing to Coda.
It's definitely it definitely comes from a value of earnestness. This is somebody, Davey, the creator of the game, has been through this sort of scenario before, and it really does show the artistic, creative process and the foibles of it, and especially when somebody else loves your work, maybe even more than you do, because he is obsessive with Coda's work.
And it's interesting that you refer to him as the game's creator, because he is, but
at the same time,
they're Coda's games.
It's a very Vonnegut-y thing, right? Because when you read Slaughterhouse 5, he presents it as him talking about himself and his experiences, but they're clearly not talking about himself or his experiences, just using his own voice led to it. So in that way, there's definitely precedent for what he's doing here, of giving his own voice. And the really impression I find is at the very beginning, he gives you his email address, asking if you have opinions, let him know. Which should tell you something about both the Davy that he's presenting to the audience, as well as what maybe is at stake for him in this, because he's particularly asking for a response.
Yeah, it's what ends up being, because he does put, like, the story puts his email at the very beginning for questions and comments and concerns and feedback, and that should be immediate. Like, you don't realize at the time, but that is like the first red flag slapping you in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
And this does, and the thing, and the way the narrative is set up, I guess you could probably catch what we're saying. You could probably pick it up and put down at this point, but Coda never wanted these games out. We know that for what we'll cover later in the game. But Coda never wanted these games to exist outside of him, and maybe it's a little less good, but maybe a few of the people who wanted to show them to.
Yeah, and, there's a definite that there's something deeper here. Can be very much well made, because Davey points out there's the beginning game where you walk through a field, there's a sign that says beginning or entering, and then another game just with the sign that says now leaving, and they're both the same path, which does make a very strong case for there being underarching themes between the games, but none of these, all of Coda's games, right, are linear paths. There's something that feels really off about the entering and leaving games, because neither of them are really a linear path. There is a path on the floor, but every game that you've been presented with so far is
some form of beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, there's an enclosure that you're being guided through.
Whereas the now entering, now leaving are just fields.
Yeah, it's a path through a field, granted, but there's no. I don't think there's a boundary, at least, unless I didn't hit a wall.
Oh, there is boundaries, yeah. Because I explored a bit.
Okay, I didn't. I guess I didn't explore enough because I wanted to see if the path led anywhere. It didn't, but it feels way more open than every other game that Coda makes.
Well, that's sort of. At the same time, are you comparing it to his dungeons? His prison cells?
Other game
they're open and yet they're not.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the prisons give an illusion of openness with the prison cell itself, but you really can't do much of anything at all in them at all. There is some game structure in some of them, but others there isn't. I
don't think we're missing any games, are we, between the point where you go through the exit and then you go through the prison sequence.
The one that Davey actually says that talks about where he met Coda is the message one. This game is online. This game is connected to the internet.
Yeah. The really interesting thing about this game is connected to the internet. I found was the painting itself, and because every person could leave one message within it, and there were so many messages just around that painting that as you got closer to the painting, the uglier it looked. Which I think is where Davey starts to feel that something is wrong with Coda.
Important to note here that Davey's concerns about Coda spring up in what could be considered Davey's most social experiment so far.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's
what pissed me off about that level was the fact that he immediately ruins the experience of a game for you by saying, well, you should know that
It's not really.
It's not real. It's all him writing these messages to each other, or to him rather. And it's like, okay, let me come to that conclusion on my own. Don't force feed the message to me. And that sort of ticked me off.
That force feeding, Davy's forceful inclusion of his own opinion comes up. I think my favorite level is after the prison level, right? Prison levels, the cleanup levels after the prison.
Yes.
It's the end of the prisons.
At the end of there are prison levels, and then there's this level where I'm sorry, we should talk about the prison levels first.
Yeah, we'll finish on the online one, right? Because I think there's more to be said, right? 'Cause these voices are definitely not Coda's. They don't feel anything like any of the text that he's put out in any of the other voices that he has laid
Well,
forth.
and some of them, to play devil's advocate, let's say some of them are. Let me think. He is trying to take all the experiences that you see, like, on forums, right? You can read any internet forum and you'll see almost all of these notes. Because I went through and read as many as I could, and they're just very evocative of internet. You have some people who are intelligent or intelligent sounding, trying to communicate, and some people that's just like butts. You know, like... And I think that he was... Assuming that he wrote it, he was kind of spot on with that experience.
Yeah.
It is definitely a very... It does feel like the notes that would be left. If you've ever seen notes left, there are games before, and I can't think of the names of any off the top of my head. I apologize. Where you're supposed to leave notes, and the next person comes along, and the notes are supposed to help, and that sort of thing. Dark Souls has kind of a take on that, but there's only so much information you can leave in a note in Dark Souls. Which, thank God, because most of the people I know who play that game are dick weasels, and I don't want to see what they have to say. No offense to my friends who do play Dark Souls and love it to pieces. I'm not shitting on the game, just the community.
Or like, it loves them to pieces.
But it does feel very real, the notes that are left behind. I don't think the notes necessarily have to say anything about Coda or his mindset at the time, because internet people are shit.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going out on any limb saying that, so...
Because when you go through these notes in the note level, there's like confusion, and there's double talk, there's chaff, there's kind of anger, there's possessiveness, and it sort of perfectly reflects all the different personalities and aspects you can see on the internet. Not necessarily one person. It seems pretty deliberate in its reflection of online culture / behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
So Davey starts coming off of reaction, because that's one of the first eyebrows I had at Davey. The next one came in the next big one came for me in the cleaning level. We'll talk about that later. In that it's like, oh, I was worried about my friend when I found out all the stuff came out of his brain. He's leaving all these messages. Why? I'm like, it's like you're like, it almost feels like you're misinterpreting on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's deliberately choosing to, instead of recognizing, oh, he is showing what the internet is. It's him going, oh, he is speaking to himself and trying to communicate his thoughts and feelings to whoever plays this game. It's like, no, he is literally showing 4chan. He's showing YouTube comments. He's
super duper projecting there, Davey.
Yeah. I mean, and some of the comments are super sad. If you read through some of them, a couple of them were, and I'm paraphrasing,
lonely.
I'm lonely, I need somebody to talk to, somebody please help me, we're all gonna
anybody
die one
there?
day. It's, you know, but that's the
By
internet.
the way, listeners, keep in mind the word projection, because that's going to come up later.
Yeah, and keep in mind also, too, we are, throughout the discussion of this game, are also projecting our own interpretations of it. So this is like layer upon 3 other layers.
Yeah, this is definitely the turducken of game commentary.
So am I the duck or?
I'm clearly the turkey in this.
So do I have to claw inside of you now? Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Well, I'd appreciate you coming up for dinner.
Joan
and Josh are collectively the chicken.
That's fine.
The love chicken. What?
Do I need to give you? I have Twinkies. Will that work?
I've had 2 Twinkies. 2 Twinkies is a snack. 3 Twinkies is mainly.
All right. We'll get another Twinkie, and then we'll talk about duck and duck turkey.
Let's talk about the house cleaning level again real quick. It's fucking delay.
I mean, to discuss that, you kind of have to talk about the prison, right?
Was that before or after the house cleaning?
The
I'm
prisons.
sorry.
The prison is. The prison level. The cleaning level is the last of the prisons.
Oh,
quote
you're right.
unquote.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause you're presented with these rooms at first. This very modern living room that is.
Right before that one, you have to stay in a prison cell for an hour, but Davey changes the game where you click a button.
Right, in the labyrinth.
Yeah.
There was a prison cell in the middle of the labyrinth, and Davey altered it so that instead of waiting an hour for the door to open, you can just click a button and the door opens for you automatically. Because he feels like, what is a game that doesn't have purpose? And standing around serves no purpose for
And
anyone.
then we can look at it from the practical perspective, from the actual person playing the game right now. You're not going to sit there and wait an hour to wait for a cell to open.
No.
But
this is the guy that put the fucking dog and child fire puzzle
Well,
in the standing
that's
pyramid,
true.
So.
but the bigger point is that when he is altering it for the actual purposes of the actual person playing the beginner's guide, but then he's also altering it and removing that interpretation experience from us. He's just going, no, you cannot think for yourself. I am going to provide interpretation, and you're going to like it.
He's removing the very thing that Coda liked about his own games, from what he tells us at least.
And then
that Coda...
That they had many intense arguments about game playability.
And that's the same level where he turns around and he says that games should be playable, and Coda's like, not really. And then he sent him a zip file of a bunch of games where you just open the game and you're in a room and that's it. And they were called, playable games?
Yeah.
I think they were?
Yeah.
So it's clear that they have wildly different interpretations of what games are. And then at this point, it should also be, again, noted that he is coding Coda as somebody who is highly depressed. Somebody who
somebody who has no social circle, somebody who only talks to himself.
Yeah. So by this point, he is using the prison as sort of a interpretation of somebody who is socially awkward and lonely and is willing to do anything to reach out.
Which is totally understandable and even justifiable, right? Because you're sitting in this very pristine Art Deco room, and I want to say, was the first one called Porn Stars Die 2, or was that...
Yeah, that was the furniture prison with a well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think.
Because you're given this very pretty room, and outside is a well, but you're behind prison bars, you can't get to it. And in every version of the game that Davey flashes you through, in none of them can you get to the well. The outside is on the inside. You are on the outside, and the furniture is on the outside with you. Everything's upside down. Every permutation you can think of.
There's another little mind screw here, where all of these levels are prisons after prisons after prisons, and Davey flashes you through them. That is to say, he either tells you how to escape and move on to the next one, or he saves you from one that can't be exited. So you're like, and it's kind of weird because it basically programs the player to come to rely on Davey and agree with him to a certain extent.
And even what I find interesting, the playable version of this level, where they take you to a particular prison, show you what series of steps you need to take to exit the prison, and then you go to the prison that can't be solved because the table's missing, and the prison where when you do get all of the fixes in properly, the room expands to an unending hallway of more furniture.
Yeah, well, it was the tutorial one where there's no table, and then there's that one. That one is you're asked questions about what should be in the room, and whatever you say has no bearing on what happens, and then it expands out forever in the maze of furniture. And
the
then
same 5 pieces of furniture over and over.
Yeah.
And over.
Yeah.
But Davey completely and totally writes off this unending hallway of furniture as nothing.
Yeah, as it's just another prison. And then he flashes you through them. It's not even they're not playable, quote unquote, so you don't get to play them. He just shows you this is what they look like, this is what they look like, this is what they look like.
And to further go off that, it should be noted that, and I keep saying that, it should be noted, I'm a fucking robot, that he is showing levels that were never meant to be shown to anybody.
Yep.
They were just all works in progress. But he instead chooses to show these levels for the sake of showing off his friend's work, which is sort of bizarre. I mean, we could talk about privacy and stuff. I mean, but that's all. This is all, again, heading up towards an eventual climax in the third act of the game.
Yeah.
So now you can finally take a deep breath. Breathe with me here. Everything's fine.
Operator played my phone. No. At the end of the prison levels, and I think it is considered the last prison level, which is interesting. The last prison level is a kind of weird modernistic house, very square, very Frank Lloyd Wright-esque, and there's a square-headed person in there who asks you to help them clean. And there's very serene music playing. There's sort of a natural valley around this house.
Snow blowing outside.
Yeah.
And it's
like dusk.
Yeah.
And it's definitely the best graphics of any one of the games presented to you so far.
It's like, and there's a distinct. You start outside, and you walk through the valley, and it's wind blowing, and it's very distinct. Oh, you have to brush it. You have to bury yourself against the cold and get up this hill. And there's this warm-looking cottage, and you go inside, and it immediately changes to that nice, the wind sound is gone, and the music is playing. It's very serene and calm.
And the square-headed person sort of chit-chats idly about the nature of chores. As you go around, and you clean tubs, you set up books, you arrange couch cushions, you clear a table, you do the dishes, and then you do it all over again.
Now,
and you do all over again, and you do it all over again.
Now, at this point, Davey mentions that, well, first, he cuts the game off, because it originally was intended to go on forever.
He does not actually mention that. He says something along the lines of, and eventually the door opens, and now the door is opened on, at the top of the hill. Because it's the last of the prison levels. It's also apparently a version of his first puzzle, the two doors puzzle.
Now, see, I thought that it
because
coded...
it was mentioned, I think Josh is right.
Okay.
That the puzzle was actually intended to end. So,
okay.
No.
Or
Davey.
not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Jonah's saying that because Davey does not say that. Davey implies that eventually, after you do it for a while, like the waiting for an hour in a prison cell, that eventually it ends and the door opens and you can leave, and the door is opened. And there's, the lamppost on the other side of the door. That is what is meant. That is what is implied.
And looking at the rest of this level, he codes this as code of being peaceful, code of finding some sort of happiness. And I thought that was sort of weird. I kind of took it, my interpretation of it was that it was reflective of somebody who had OCD. Like, you had to keep cleaning, you had to keep straightening things, you had to keep routine up and question your existence and all sorts of things like that. Like, I didn't walk away from that level thinking anything peaceful. I thought it was sort of a very clear facsimile of somebody with OCD.
Yeah, I didn't get any peace from that level whatsoever. I felt like I was being forced to drive on in something I didn't want to do anymore, which I find interesting because here's Coda. Coda's a guy that likes to build levels where you are stuck and you have to get the feeling. Yeah, do a thing. Feel, really understand, and know you're arrogant. There's no stopping. This is the only level that doesn't give you any time to breathe. The housekeeper's always asking you to do the next thing. Which, by the way, makes it a playable game.
Yeah.
And I got hella serenity out of this. Mainly, I think it's because the idle chit-chat, squarehead, intersected this, the serene qualities of the music and the repetitive activities that always seem to make the place a little nicer, etc., etc., etc. But it also, it can easily be seen as just another prison cell. And that's one of the the strongest, most apparent interpretations that Coda was maybe trying to say something about what imprisons people, what imprisons him or others. It's entirely possible, but it's taken as he had a good week, so I guess he made this nice thing.
Right.
And the very end of all of these prison things is a phone that you sit down and you talk with the past version of yourself who was in the prison, but you never tell the person in the prison to escape. It's more along the lines of, well, that was a different me, and I felt a different way, and eventually I left.
Does it pass you want to know if it's going to be okay?
Yeah, and it gives me very, do you remember the when I was showing you guys before the Binding of Isaac, the Time Fuck game by Macmillan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of vibes from that.
A little bit.
That the you that you're in now is an experience that you can't leave or be told how to leave. But that there's nothing wrong with being in the experience so long as you're not being rushed.
Right.
My feeling... Wow, it feels so weird trying to give an interpretation of a game that asks you not to interpret things.
Right.
That the housekeeping game was a rush, that you were being rushed. Hey, go back and straighten the bookshelf. Hey, can you go clean the tub now? You don't have to be perfect about it, just keep doing it. Rather than being told that everything is okay and that change will come with time, at a time that you're a different person with a different worldview. That was fine. But Davey was looking for assurance. What he took about out of the whole thing, out of the repetitive task of cleaning, and out of the phone conversation, was having a voice to tell you that everything is good and will be fine, and that there's an end to everything that is going on, is calm. And I can't help but think that Coda is a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Because I think his positive, happy nature with all of these things, I think was just him fucking a bit with Davey, frankly. I think he finds Davey his own personal game. Because Davey sees this perfection in Coda's work, but then also hates the thing that makes Coda's work perfect to him.
Right. And we didn't discuss the lamppost, did we? Because by this point, the lampposts are a major theme.
Yeah, every single game at this point ends with the lamppost. It's, I mentioned before, it is the period on the end of every single one of these games at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
we missed a game.
We're probably missing a couple games, because there's 15 or 16 different levels.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. The stage game.
But that comes a little later.
Does it come later?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then he's really worried about Coda's depression.
Mhm.
Right. Quote unquote.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the order is direct, because it definitely comes in acts, right?
Yeah.
You get the intro levels, your Act 1. Your Act 2 is your prison levels. And then your Act 3 are the levels that are disjointed and awkward feeling.
Yeah, sort of he's coding it as the downward spiral.
Yeah, that's how Davey interprets it, right?
Mhm.
I don't think any of these levels have to be mentioned in a particular order, but they're all fascinating for their own right.
Mhm.
That's why we're saying you should definitely go play it, experience it, and then come back.
I especially loved the level where you're at first students
Oh,
in a
yes.
classroom.
That one was fun.
Yeah, listening to this teacher tell you how to be perfect.
Not even students. One student.
Well, no, it was from the different perspectives.
Yeah, you kept changing perspectives, so I guess it was assumed that you're different students, just changing perspectives.
Yeah, but when you switch perspective, there is only one student in the audience.
See, I'm unsure how to take it. There's one way to take it, that the student is surrounded by other students, but
Yeah.
only sees the professor because the professor is the personification.
No.
That's
when
your
you-
perfection.
I mean, when you're the professor, because there's only one student in the audience.
But when he talks, he's still saying, using the plural to refer to people. So
Yeah.
it could be that he's just looking at that one student. I don't know.
Because it's interesting, it can feel like a conversation in many ways between Coda and Davey.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
There's two ways to look at it, right? Is Coda the professor who is explaining how to be to Davey? Or is Davey the lost perfection?
Yeah.
Who's trying to say that everything's perfect?
Trying to impose this vision of perfection upon Coda.
And it sounds like we're being harsh to Davey, and we kind of are, but like I said, it's going to make more sense when we get towards the end of the conversation.
Yeah. And there's the stage level that we didn't mention before, where
I
you walk
mentioned it.
in on the stage. You both look the same.
There's that-
Are you kidding? I look like I ate Josh. What are you babbling about?
So you walk on stage and you're told to act cool and lean against this wall and talk to this girl. But none of the options are what the girl wants to hear.
None of the options are what the stage director wants you to say.
Right.
Is that you
Well,
cannot say anything right.
Doesn't the girl actually speak back to you at one point and say, what sort of response is that? Or is it the stage
No, that's
director?
all the stage
Yeah,
director.
it's all the stage director. She never ends up responding. Everything you say is wrong, so the scene never actually progresses.
And they end up giving you these little bouncy things to bounce against.
And they're supposed to be people.
To try to,
Yeah.
to try to give yourself something to bounce off of and get a new perspective.
Which I actually do kind of find cool that it's like the game sort of it sort of presents a narrative where it's like, well, you keep fucking up normal social interaction, so here's something that looks more like a video game.
Not only that, but I also took it as like the bouncing off people. Like he is so socially avoidant that he literally, quote unquote, bounces away
off
from people because he can't handle it.
And there is, I think, some validity to the idea that Coda is frustrated at this point. And that is made fairly obvious, I guess, if we move forward to the press game.
Well, the stage game ends with
with being locked away.
You keep going backwards, and more gates fall down.
It gets darker.
Yeah, you decide that it's... And even that's an interpretation on what he's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know exactly because Davy's interpretation kind of clouds your own vision of what might be going on here. That he decides to leave the stage and the doors, the gates slam behind you. The more gates slam, and Davy is saddened by this.
And it should be mentioned, I'm trying not to say noted, Davy also really doesn't give you a chance to breathe. Instead of giving you some time to come to your own conclusions about what's going on and your own interpretations and your own experiences, he just goes right in with his commentary. And it's almost unneeded at times, which is, again, part of the overall point of the game. But it's he never gives you a chance to pause and to think.
Getting that chance to even finish the hallway doesn't happen. He just cuts you off like, you've seen enough of this, and this is too sad. I can't stand to see my friend like this. Which is just an interesting statement. Always.
Which again, in certain situations, that's even noble. Like, look, I don't want to show you the sort of downward spiral that my friend is mentally experiencing. Because depression is not something that's an easy thing to wave away, or to say, oh yeah, it's not a big deal, psh, depression, whatever. He's coming across as a person very concerned for his friend. And that in itself is noble.
And yet he's doing it anyway.
If he stopped. Yeah, because he keeps showing you more of his friend's depression.
Exactly.
So if it were. But this is the point where you reach the climax, you could say, of the game.
Yeah, we're skipping ahead just a little bit, but it's just a little bit more of the same and more of the same.
Yeah, it kind of expounds on the same ideas of kind of throwing yourself at these situations where there's considerations of what is perfection, what is greatness, what isn't to live.
And some of the questions in other levels, and in this one, are what's the nature of creativity? What do you do when the well run dry with ideas? Or when you feel just sort of stuck? And Davy is interpreting these as depression and anxiety and depression. And this is what we're fed, and this is what we're led to believe throughout the entirety of these levels. And then we get to the level called the Machine.
And this is where the narrative changes dramatically.
Oh yeah.
Because you tell from the beginning to the guard who is guarding the machine that you have come to get information from the machine, and how will you get the information? I'll be brutal, I'll be quiet,
or I'll be quick.
Yeah, those are the options you're given. None of these are friendly. These are all challenging options you're given. You're not given a friendly option to the machine.
And then the guard turns around and says that it should be noted that the machine's name is Coda.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the press are going to want to know what's going on. And you just, the door opens and you go through. And then there's a hallway with a bunch of different, members of the press, and they're all asking a bunch of questions at the same time. You push past them, and then you go into another building, another room, and there is a literal machine right in the middle of the room.
An engine-looking box with tubes in it.
It should be noted that the machine groans when you look at it. It moves. The pistons are still moving, but they're moving in a clunky manner that feels like it could break at any second. And the questions that you're given to ask the machine, all of them are directed anger at the machine. Mm-hmm. Why are you doing this to me?
Why have you abandoned us?
Yeah, it's at this point that you started feeling bad for Coda. Because Coda doesn't want all of these people outside of his door. Coda doesn't want to be told that he has to create now.
I'm sorry, but we're not sure, especially given the later levels, if Coda's trying to satirize Davy's perspective, because he becomes very blunt about it at the end.
Yep.
And in that bluntness, he doesn't seem depressed. He seems much more earnest about the creative process.
Yep. I mean, all these things that Davy has been telling us is like, oh, these are signs of depression. It's like, oh, I was so worried about him because I was sure he was depressed, but blah, blah, blah. And Coda outright says, like, the downward spiral, the emptying of the well of ideas, it's all part of the process.
Yeah, here you are presented as antagonizing the machine, and you walk outside and you tell the press specifically, the machine won't give us what we want. It wants to hurt us.
And then we're told there are a couple different options, but they're basically either we destroy the machine or we destroy everything the machine created. So, whatever you wind up choosing, you get a gun, and then you start cycling through some of Coda's old levels, and as you shoot the gun, you destroy everything. And Davy...
No.
I'm sorry?
I hate to interject, but just like a funny thought occurred to me. What if this was Davy's interpretation of Call of Duty, that the machine is slowly dying?
Maybe. It could be. That's equally as valid as anything else that we're talking about.
Actually, to justify your giggles, we are not given Davy's perspective on anything that Coda did not make.
Yeah.
We don't know how he feels about Gone Home. We don't know how he feels about Earthbound. We don't know how he feels about Halo or Honey Pop. I'm going to assume positively. I'd love a Davy remix of Namco High.
That would be good. I would turn it down.
Although I think Davy might be Namco High. Shots fired. But we don't. There's nothing we have to contextualize Davy outside of his interaction with Coda's creations. We don't see any creations from Davy, we think. The machine's pretty close to the end. I think
That's actually the second to last level. The next level is the final one.
I'm about to say, we're dick deep in Act 3 by that point.
Yeah, and the machine, you kill all of its work. You destroy all of it with your gun, and you reach the machine, and the machine specifically tells you, put down the gun. But you can't. The only way to progress is
to shoot the machine.
Just unload in the machine. And it grows louder, and Davy...
This conversation's getting a little hot.
Yeah. Well, Davy's taking this and saying it's self-destructive. He wants... And the implication is that he is going to try to hurt himself because he's so depressed. Yeah. Which, again, this is...
Not only...
No, go ahead.
Not only that, but Davy is explicitly saying, how can he hurt me like that? Do not put out anymore. Whenever I talk about his games, I feel better.
Yep.
And
I feel so much better when people tell me how much they like his games and stuff like that.
And yeah. Then we get to the tower.
Yeah.
Now, the tower is very deliberately built by Coda. If you are just a regular gamer with no coding knowledge or modification knowledge, you cannot beat this game. There's no way. The very first quote-unquote puzzle that he presents you with is a maze with invisible walls. And if you touch those walls, your screen flashes red and bumps you back to the beginning of the maze. And then, as always, Davy turns around and says, well, you don't have to do that. I'm going to let you circumvent that. And he builds a bridge over so you can just completely bypass that. The next puzzle is a 6-digit sort of number spinner. And you have to randomly guess that specific number in order to open up a walk bridge. And again, It's meant to be tedious. It's meant to take up time. You're not meant to do it. And Davey just provides you the answer.
It should be noted here that our own What Are We Fighting For? Josh got more than halfway through the random number.
He got 4 of the 6 numbers correct on the first try.
Before the numbers
Not bad.
Yeah.
I don't even know how.
It was a gut feeling.
The last one is literally one you can't solve.
Well,
You can't reach the level.
yeah, it's the old his first puzzle, the 2-door puzzle, but once
there's no switch.
Yeah, once the door closes on the other side, there's no switch on the other side of the door.
You're just stuck.
And as you're going through these puzzles, Davey's kind of telling you at this point explicitly, I mean, look, this is the first time I've had to make changes to these games.
Mhm.
You couldn't beat these games without me. I made these changes because they needed to be done. And that's when you start to realize, and this is when Davey finally admits to the fact that he modified the house game to
In order for you
Yep.
to progress. Yeah.
yeah. And whether or not the ending ever existed to that game to begin with,
We don't know.
It definitely called into question.
Now, this is just the stuff Davey admits to.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we progress through the tower, to points that it should be noted, no, you couldn't get to without Davey's programming abilities.
Breaking the game, effectively.
Breaking the game, you get to a message that is, at least ostensibly, from Coda, his own words, written on walls, to Davey.
Which Coda knew that basically only Davey would see because he knew that Davey...
Would break his game.
Yeah.
So, the message, and I'm paraphrasing here, you really need to read it for yourself, is very explicitly saying to Davey, I don't want anything to do with you, stop contacting me, you make me physically ill. That's exactly what he says at one point. Why are you showing my games? This is my own privacy that you're violating. Why are you modifying my games? Please stop putting lampposts in my games. There is something wrong with you. I don't know how to fix you. That's not my problem. And then as you read these messages, Davey is getting more and more frantic. And he starts talking about how much Coda meant to him and that he knew what he was doing was wrong. And he just wants his friend back. And all of this... I don't even know how to describe it. Very depressive stuff on Davey's end. And it turns out that Coda wasn't really depressed or anxious or feeling social anxiety. He was just making games.
Yeah, I do. Coda, I think I'm trying not to paraphrase, but Coda directly says, creative process involves frustration. It's just a natural part of the process. Mm-hmm. I understand that, but you don't seem to. And as Davey gets more and more upset by his own behavior, because he says he's releasing these games to sort of try and contact Coda again in some way, shape, or form. But by releasing these games, it's like the ultimate sin,
yeah.
Right.
Because the entire Coda does not want them out there, and your player character dies and starts rising above the world in the same sort of glitch that super interested Davey in the labyrinth level, I think the second level.
Yeah.
You play the whole thing.
There's an epilogue where you wander through
A stage that Davey made for Coda in his apology,
a train
quote unquote.
station and a mansion, but the mansion is falling apart. And it looks beautiful from the outside, but it's full of sand. You follow through holes, and Davy finally comes clean. And it really... It's the freshest take I've had on the unreliable narrator that I've seen in a long time. Because it's not only saying the wrong things, but the entire world that you've been built. He confesses that he has done this because he needs to feel something that, that he has an addiction to...
External validation.
Yeah.
And one of the most... while Davey admits to altering Coda's games, what he never admits to is the stuff like with the lamppost, where he edited for content, not for clarity. He added something to these games rather than making a faster route through what Coda had already made. And the thing we see in the epilogue is with the Rise Above is the labyrinth. But this labyrinth seems to go on forever and ever and ever, and almost mirrors the end of the universe seen at the bottom of the second level. And look, in hindsight, you can see where the second level, the labyrinth, the gun level, is where Davy's problems begin. But even talking about it this far, if you're listening to this, talking about it this far is like I feel personally drained.
Yeah.
Because you sort of have to go through. Davy's an addict, and his arc isn't completed. Like he hasn't either gotten help or treatment or really come to understand what addiction means.
Because he's still trying to get in contact with Coda, despite the fact that Coda very explicitly said, "Stop contacting me, leave me alone."
And he's trying to contact him in literally the worst way. The way he understands is the worst way.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so instead of showing it to a handful of people, now he's released this game, or this collective of games, to the entire world, which was, exactly as you said, the direct opposite of what Coda wanted.
And you feel drained because you have been made a party to this.
Yeah.
Like, we all are party to this now. If you're listening to this right now, you're a party to this narrative. And it's super rough.
And it's also a look into Davy's head, and now this is me offering my interpretation. I struggle, and I've mentioned a couple times, I struggle with depression. I have chronic depression. So when you get to the tower level into the epilogue, and Davy starts talking about how much he hates himself, that hit me a little too hard, because I can understand 100% what that feels like. And when you find something that is hopeful, or that is creative, or better than you, or more perfect than you, you cling on to it because you want to learn how to be that person, how to stop being so sad and depressed and melancholy and blah all the time. But instead of going about it in a way where maybe he talked to a Coda about it, or maybe he talks to a therapist, or maybe he does anything except what he did, he winds up ruining what would have been a good friendship otherwise, I think. And still not recognizing that his problem is his head. His problem is how he reacts to people and to situations. And he flat out says that he hates himself and he doesn't want to feel this way anymore, and what can he do to make this right? And you can't.
But by asking him this way, it's almost clear that he's gone too far.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a better time to have a game like this than the culture that we're in right now. And even talking about it right now is an extension of the same thing. We're existing in a share culture right now. When I see something interesting like the Neverhood, and I make a video where I talk about it and show it to the world, it certainly makes me feel better, because I get to talk and show to these people this thing that I love and what it means to me. The difference between me and you and Davey is that we're not fucking it up.
Well, and that's, when Kite first showed me this game, at the end of it, we talked for a while, and I smoked a lot of cigarettes. Because I needed it. I needed the chemical. So I get it to a certain extent. But one of the things, I mentioned to him that in this age of chaff, of just information overload, where any and everything, I can go online right now and read all the chemical properties of boron. I can become a boron fucking expert without having to put on underpants. In this, in the digital age, the act of presenting information that is worth your time, presenting media and entertainment that is compelling, is almost comparable to the creation of that media itself. I don't know, I follow some podcasts and some internet personalities who I wouldn't have reconnected with movies I missed, with books I hadn't given a second thought to, or games that I maybe rented once that I never really thought about again. I would have missed out on what I now understand to be a big part of myself. And because of that, I'm terrified of it happening again, so I compulsively look for the information. And I compulsively try to share it. And it's a compulsion that I don't know if I would fight, because my own brain tells me, like, oh, don't fight this. This is constructive. The same, and there are shades of Davey in that.
Yeah.
Can we make a book, by the way, Shades of Davey? I kind of like
50 Shades of Davey.
50 Shades of Davey.
Where some rich anonymous lady just validates it in weird places.
And it's worth noting too that social media doesn't discourage adding more crap into the digital void, right? Like, it encourages it rapidly. I mean, Twitter, Instagram, Tinder, Facebook. I mean, this is all meant. On the nose description is that it's meant to share your life with people, but in the grand scheme of things, it's meaningless, right? And we're all just adding to it, and it's getting harder and harder to differentiate information and things that are actually pertinent and interesting and useful from pictures of food.
Let me throw kind of a personal experience. Joan and I...
You're fucking baby, aren't you?
No. Joan and I met because we used to be giant weeaboos. And we might still be on a level still, I don't know.
Sort of.
But we were huge fucking weeaboos.
Oh, speaking of which, you'll miss my meltdown on Real Mecha versus Gundam Wing Mecha.
There we go.
So we... I knew somebody through that same forum that we met through, Luna, who liked to draw and make images that she would share with the community. But I remember one day she blew up. She was just so pissed off. And I asked why. And this person had made a Wikipedia and had used one of her images as the stock image for something he was trying to explain. In my eyes, this was, using something that was out there. It was a picture of something that wasn't even hers. It was fan art. So it's a thing of a thing of a thing that you're getting angry that was taken from you and used in ways that you did not agree to. But at the same time, by making that fan art, that is something that is personal to her. That was her thing. And for that to be stripped from her and just thrown out there, even if it was credited to the fact that it was just used as somebody else's content, left a lack of validation to her, because it was being presented in a way that was outside of her realm of control or ability. And in that way, you know, I might not have understood Kona as much without having seen the people who create things that aren't meant for mass sharing. Yeah, mass consumption. You know, TV Dinner and I, the things that, and Joe too, I think all of us create things because we want to share with people, but there are just as many people who don't want to share, that just want to create for that sake of having created and making something that feels good to them, without that having to be validated externally by other people or judged.
Absolutely, I think, and I think all y'all relate to this in a certain sense. I think y'all have shades of this. I know personally, I speak for myself, and I know a lot of other writers or creative types. They have like a notepad document on their computer that will never be seen by any other human eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just for them.
Yep.
It's just for them to work out something, or it may be a journal, or it may be, you know, some scribbles in a notebook somewhere. But it
got like a half dozen Google documents.
Yeah, it doesn't exist for other people. It can't exist for other people. And you know, Coda could have been cranking out. Coda could have been a developer for, or could have been a programmer for BioWare. Coda may have been putting together a bunch of different shit for, you know, the masses, for us, the unwashed. But the only thing known is that this specifically wasn't for others.
Right. And Davey took that and essentially violated it. And I don't like using the word violated per se, but he violated his privacy.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel dirty because you have been a part of this now.
Mm-hmm.
And this was why originally when both Joan and TV Dinner, separate from each other, said we need to sit down and talk about this game. I didn't, because the ending made me feel dirty. I literally, Hollis can probably tell you exactly the moment that after I finished the game, I sat down, I cried like a baby for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then I took a shower, and then...
You were in that shower for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, probably about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I got out of the shower, and everything was fine.
See, I forget that I'm so much more used to feeling dirty than you are.
When I was playing through the end part of the tower and through the entirety of the epilogue, I was sobbing. It was 5:30 in the morning. I was just playing through it, and I just was crying my eyes out because it hit home and then hit myself too much on the nose for me not to get affected by it. And then...
Well, let me give you the full scenario when I played it. I played it at the goddamn worst time. I have chronic anxiety disorder, and that day was one of my bad days. And all I wanted to do was to sit down with a video game. And I fucking adore the Stanley Parable. It's a great game, and I just wanted a game that I could sit down and experience and not have to be in charge of anything or do anything. Because that's what I do with my life. I'm in charge of shit for a living, and it gets really tiresome, especially with anxiety disorder. So to hit this, and to hit something that hits so close to home, because this sharing culture is something that I embrace so closely, but I also understand that feeling of having something stripped from you, and the validation of showing something to others that you found. Whether or not that other person made it, hey, listen to this song that I found. Isn't this song pretty dope?
Yeah.
Speaking of validation, I've received word during this broadcast that Slow Beef totally favorited one of my tweets.
Nice.
Oh, right.
Up top.
Up top, yeah!
I asked him about future plans for police content. I also called him a junker, which I'm glad he appreciated.
Yes.
Nice.
But slow beef and diabetes. You might have heard us during our Armacron playthrough, where Kite, like a fascist, declared there shall be no Retsu Parade jokes.
I saw that shit coming. I saw the glint in your eye. If I didn't kill it, it was never going to end.
Let the news spread forth through mountain and valley that you were a douche.
You're not wrong.
But I bring up Retsu Parade for a few reasons. Because a lot of their folds, a lot of their dimensions, kind of reflect this. Retsu Parade are commenters for material that other people are commenting on. That's how they started. They started basically by making MST3Ks, making, not totally mocking, but comedic critiques of other Let's Plays.
Yeah, taking the piss.
And there were some missteps. People didn't get it. People took this thing that they were doing for a small audience, like basically the something awfulers, basically the good ones, right?
Yeah.
And like the internet dread saw this and like started attacking some of these people who, whose quote unquote crime was bad commentary on video games.
Which is the worst crime.
Yeah, it is. We may be committing it right now. Who knows? Time will have to tell. But Beef and Beatus were like, please stop this, universe. Like, attention, dicks who were doing this. Please stop. Like, they there was the girl who put up the Eternal Darkness playthrough, that, these Retsu Parade quote-unquote fans attacked, and then they found out that she had certain issues, and they felt really bad because they didn't know that going into it. Then the whole Billy MC debacle, and Slow Beef and Diabetes basically had to change their approach, and mainly what they do now is critique and sort of lovingly mock bad video games. Because commenting on commentary, their satire was taken and adjusted to fit the worldview of these other people that wanted a sort of war cry. Now, by that same token, I sitting in my nothing apartment watching Snatcher LPs and eating pizza and very pointedly not wearing pants, throw something up on Twitter about how much I'd love to see some more content, and that content creator within a few hours notices and gives sort of that version of the thumbs up. So Davey is wrong for what I think most of us would feel that Davey is wrong for his actions in creating this game out of these levels, because their code is levels but Davey's game. We're sort of complicit in this, but at the core, we all understand to a certain extent the constructive and generative and positive aspects of this commentary on commentary on commentary media turducken. There's positive stuff that we've all gotten out of it. I've said before to at least 100 people, a few of which have gone on to become Retsu Parade fans themselves. One of the things I love about them is that I get to sit in a room, no matter how bad the day is, no matter how busy my friends are, I can flip on their channel and suddenly I'm making fun of a bad game with a few buddies. At my desk, at work, no matter what. That's what I'm doing. And that is a very emotionally powerful thing for me. And I think for a lot of people, the flip side is Davey. And I don't think anyone other than the guy who made the Stanley Parable can make this game.
Right.
Which, yeah, I mean, I started this whole thing by is it a game? I mean, it's a game.
Yeah.
And I think it also, on the flip side, if we're going to talk about the Davey, quote-unquote, side of this, using the internet and playing video games, and I'm generalizing here, is a very isolating activity, isn't it? I mean, look at people who stare down at their phones all day. Look at people who sit behind a screen all day. And this isn't, 1 or 2 people. This is our culture now, right? This is cell phones and the proliferation of easy access and low cost, and the easy access and low cost of personal computers. Everybody's behind a screen doing their thing. And that takes away a lot of the social interactions that humans should have. We're a very social being animal. And when you remove that aspect and you put artificial screens and interactions in front of you and use that as reality instead, it's not necessarily healthy.
Maybe it can be unhealthy, but I think that's also sort of pissing in the eye of the social element of the internet when used positive.
Well, yeah, Hollis knows how I tend to be. Even when I'm being antisocial, I'm still being social, because I will go log into World of Warcraft, and I don't raid, I don't PvP, I fuck around with my friends for a couple hours. That's where I get my jollies from. Whenever I play a video game, I feel weird if I am just sitting down playing it by myself and not experiencing it with others.
Yeah.
Well, the joy of playing Undertale recently was that me and Shane sat down and we talked about the meaning and subjectivity of Undertale.
Yeah. And
to me, it's all very social, and it brings things together for somebody like me who has anxiety.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or that's something that I don't experience either. I'm playing devil's advocate, really, in that respect.
I hear you. Yeah, of course.
It's just interesting that, again, assuming that Davey is telling a true story and this isn't all just a made-up story for the sake of making an interesting story, that he is not recognizing that as both a quote-unquote denizen of the internet, and somebody who seems to otherwise have a clear handle on the nature of video game players and gamers and the community at large. Like, he is not self-reflecting.
I think that's pretty much the nail on the head. I think whereas Coda is living with the internet, with the digital tools at disposal, Davey's living through them.
Yeah.
And that might... I think all of us have similar takes on a beginner's guide to a certain extent. We all project our own sort of feelings on the nuances, but I think that sort of strikes at the core of our sort of group, our collective argument here.
Yeah, it's, all of us are very different people, some of us have our own problems. It's very easy to overlay your own problems over a game like this.
Over media, in general.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we are also all creatives. We're all pretty comfortable digitally. We're all gamers. We're all funny. We're all good at video games.
And this is again one of my interpretations, but I think this is what Marshall McLuhan said with his little book, like The Media and the Message. It's taking something and recognizing the message it's presenting, but also realizing that the world really is a global village right now. I mean, I wouldn't have known anybody here, Josh, you, Travis, anybody, without the internet. Like, it just wouldn't have never happened because of distance. It would have been some severe serendipity if it did, frankly. And the way we use media has now become part of our message. It has to. It's just a way that we've technologically evolved. Like, there's no separation from it at this point. And it's all in how we use it to communicate. And Davey is a prime example of you're doing it wrong. You're doing it as a means to your own end without respecting the privacy of your internet friend or privacy of people in general.
We have to move towards closing thoughts here because we can do this all night.
Yeah, there's
long.
so much more to say.
My butt hurts so bad right now, guys.
Gun oil. No. But if I could sort of form my final thought on what you're saying right now, Joan. The internet is an amplifier.
Yes.
What you put into it come out 1,000-fold. Davey put an almost self-destructive amount of need for validation into it, and we got out a beginner's guide.
Yep.
It sort of perfectly illustrates the dish, the broadcast of social ability, anxiety, comfort, and the weird intersection with media that the internet can give you. So I guess overall, C-, 3 of 10 wouldn't bang. That's my overall thoughts on it. Kite, how about you?
I really, I enjoyed Hell's Bells. I had a lot of fun marathoning it with you guys.
Yeah. It's been a great Deadly Towers playthrough.
Yeah, it's, killing the slimes was really a positive experience for me.
Who knew it ended that way?
No one else in the world.
No one can call us on this. What are they going to do? They're going to play the
Deadly Towers? No.
But if anybody besides us ever decide to listen to this all the way through, first, shame on you.
Yes,
especially if you haven't already played the game.
Double shame.
No, I've never played a game. Like, I've read movies and listened to songs before that have played with the media in such a way that it destroyed me. The House of Leaves is a great example in the same ilk of taking a form of media and seeing how far you can go with it. And it is such a great commentary, both on the nature of socialization, on the nature of the creative process, and just really what it is to be and feel, and what it is to have an addiction. There's so many things that are just human elements that are timeless and personless, and I can't imagine a better game to express the frustration felt in trying to connect with somebody who doesn't want to be connected with, and at the same time not seeing the destructive nature that you're embodying by doing. It's I can't really lavish enough praise on it. Is it the greatest game ever? No, it's not. But for what it is the closest I can think to a massively produced game to being art. And for that, I would love to buy the creator a beer and tell him that it's okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to buy the creator a beer and not fucking ask him about this shit at all. Just leave him the fuck alone.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
How about that Braves game, eh, buddy?
Go Atlanta teams. For me, I guess closing thoughts were, it hit very close to home, too close to home. I recently graduated college back in May of this year, and when he mentioned the points of external validation, that's when I really started to sob, because I spent years in school looking for that A+, that great job on the project, that feedback, and now that I am both out of school and looking for work, I don't have that validation anymore. I don't have that drive to create anymore. I feel so worthless as a human being. And this is maybe a little too personal for this video, but it's that depression and that isolation and that need for validation that hit me. Now, again, I don't know if Coda is an actual person, if this is just Davey talking out different aspects of himself, or if he is an actual person and all this stuff actually happened. I don't know. But ultimately, this game is more about depression than, like, Depression Quest is. And if you ever wanted to get into the head of somebody who has depression, play this game. That's probably one of the best things I can say about it. Like, it's a great game, great experience. You'll learn a lot about people and game design and all sorts of little aspects of the human condition, and I highly recommend it. Josh?
Yeah, I don't want to say that this game was ruined for me early on, not from any outside source, but playing it, I had some sort of disconnect where my suspension of disbelief got jarred, and I do not remember where in the game it was, and I just couldn't help but think that this is just a very, very elaborate story, and I couldn't get all the way back in and see it from the inside. But it is so well put together that I hated Davey at the end. I hated Davey so much. It's like, Davey, you have done all of the wrong things. And that again, that may be projection. That may be, again, we're not supposed to interpret shit, because that's the, you know, the crux of the issues that it brings up are, you know, putting yourself into a place where maybe you don't fit. This is a circle peg. It's not going in this square hole. Stop forcing yourself into it and messing everything up. Because just everything David does, especially, you know, turning back and looking at it, it's like, you did everything wrong. And you thought you were helping the entire time.
You know, it's so hugely fair, the one thing you said. Davey comes across as a mistrustful narrator fairly early in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to, you know, give understanding to the people who just don't get it, because if you lose Davey early, you're not going to get the same experience, and that's not a fault of the person experiencing that. You know, there's not a full universality, I think, to the game, which is another reason why, like, you know, if somebody were to ask me, greatest game ever, does everyone need it? No. But I think people of a certain mindset do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess if that's it, we have been the What Are We Fighting For? We're all going to go take our Prozac now.
Fuck that, I'm smoked. Join us next week for our playthrough of I Am Toast.
Join us again for our playthrough of The Sour and the Pity, where it's a much more uplifting game.
We're gonna be doing about as long a conversation on Shower with Your Dad Simulator next week. So tune in for that one.
Oh, and don't forget to stay with us for Goat Simulator. We're going to be doing a full long stream of it. We're going to look in every single corner of the game.
And
so
Gabe
that
Neural
will be
Simulator,
about 72
and
hours.
Water Simulator, and Rock Simulator. So join
There's
us
also there's also our Twitch of Millipede and Deadly Towers to be checking out.
Oh, don't forget Dr. Mario.
This is the new season.
Please join us
of
for
the Water
face
Refinement.
camming, our next experience in the shower. You know, we'll be making sure to live stream that. Our next.
We're gonna live stream ourselves playing all the Five Nights at Freddy's games from Spooky Showers. Did we miss anything?
While in the shower.
Your Let's Poop episode.
Oh
There's
yeah,
gonna be.
yeah. Let's
Sorry.
deuce.
All right, we gotta go. We gotta make dinner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take it easy, yo.
Night,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.